So today's daf is Kuf Chaf, which is 120. We're going to start with the Mishnah, where we left off yesterday. Matzilin sal malek kikarot, afal pi sheyesh bo me'at seudot, v'igul shel devela, v'havit shel yain. So we learned about what you can save if there is, God forbid, a fire on Shabbat and you need to save food from your home. So we said that you're allowed to save 3 meals, but here in the Mishnah it tells us that you're allowed to save a basket, even if it's full of so many loaves that it's 100 meals, and you can save sort of a these large cakes that they had of fruit, figs or dates. You can save them even though it's much more than what you need for 3 meals, and you can save an entire barrel of wine even though it's more than what you need for for your 3 meals. In other words, you don't have to, let's say, if you're saving this food from the fire, you don't have to say, well, I'm going to pour out exactly how much wine I need into a small container and take it. You just take the big container. You just take like the bottle of soda, so to speak. You just take what you, whatever it is.
Only for figs or fruit? It can be cake or fruit.
It's usually figs. They're referring to figs, as far as I know. Yeah. So, it could probably, I think it could also be dates, but it's talking about fruits that you can press together, yeah. And you can say to other people, come save for yourselves. In other words, tell the people in the neighborhood, since you have a limit on how much you're allowed to take out of your house, because we're worried that you're going to panic and you're going to put out the fire, so you can invite other people to come and participate as well. And if they're smart, they'll save your stuff and then come back to you after Shabbat and ask you to pay them for the work that they did. Right? So that's smart. If they're smart, then they'll take advantage of the situation. Where can you bring the items to? You can take it to a chatzer ha'me'orevet, which means, remember that they would live in a courtyard, and in this courtyard was multiple homes, and in the courtyard was walled. So you're allowed to carry, obviously, from your home into a walled courtyard on Shabbat. The only thing is that you need to make an eruv. You need to make eruv chatzerot, that all of the houses in the courtyard join together in one partnership to allow you to carry into that area. So the Chachamim say you cannot violate the prohibition of carrying in order to bring these items out of your house. You can only bring them into a chatzer me'orevet, into a courtyard that you would normally be able to carry in. However, Ben Betera Omer Af L'Sheina Me'orevet, Ben Betera says you can bend the rules a little bit here, and the rabbis allowed you to bring the items even into a chatzer, even into a courtyard that does not have an eruv, that you normally would not be able to carry in. So this is similar to the machloket we saw earlier about a mavoi, where the Chachamim said that you needed to have 2 lechayin, you had to have 2 sticks on the side of the mavoi in order to allow you to bring items into it, and Ben Betera said even just 1. So he's a little bit more lenient on the destination that you're allowed to take these items to. And it says Ulesham Mutzi Kol Kelet Hashmisho, and he can take with him all that he needs for the meal. In other words, not just the food, but he can take forks, plates, knives, cups, everything that he needs. V'lovesh kol ma she'yochol lilbosh, and he puts on his body whatever he can wear. V'otef kol ma she'yochol la'atof, and he should wrap himself in whatever he can wrap himself. In other words, if he wants to save his clothing as well, he should wear it on him and take it out wearing it. Rabbi Yossi says, Yud Chet Kelim. According to Rabbi Yossi, as we're going to see explained later on in the Gemara, he only allows you to wear 18 items, no more. Just like he allows you only to bring 3 meals, right? You're only allowed to bring 3 meals, you're only allowed to wear 18 pieces of clothing, and they have to coordinate into an outfit, as we're going to see. And he can go back and get dressed again and bring out more and say to others, come and save with me. So what it means is like this. There's a machloket here, but basically we're going to go with what Rashi says. Rashi says that this is going back on the Chachamim. According to Rabbi Yossi, you can only carry the items out once. So you can go into your house, wear 18 items, walk out with them, and that's all you're allowed to take from the house. Why? Because if we tell you can save your wardrobe, you're going to eventually you're going to panic, trying to get as much out as you can, and you might extinguish the fire, which would be a violation of Shabbat. We don't want you to do that. And then we say, though, according to the rabbis, though, you can wear as much as you need, take it off in the courtyard, go back inside, put on more clothes, bring them out, take it off, go back inside. In other words, you can go back and forth as many times as you want. Rabbi Yossi says, So Rabbi Yossi says you can only do that. You can only do it once, and you can only do 18 things.
I'm surprised that they say also that it's because of the sakana. Because if you do that,
they're not worried about the danger. They're worried about the Shabbat, Chilul Shabbat.
That's surprising.
Yeah, it is. But I guess it wasn't considered dangerous at that point in the fire. It wasn't dangerous yet. But in any case, so that's what that's the machloket. According to the Rambam says actually the opposite. The Rambam reads it that the Chachamim allow you to put whatever you want. You can wear 25 layers, but you can only do it once. And Rabbi Yosef says you can do it 18 items, but you can do it one. You can keep going back and forth, right? But we're going to go with Rashi. Rashi says that Rabbi Yosef says you can only do it once with 18, and the Chachamim say you can do as much as you want, as many times as you want. Okay, now coming to the Gemara says, and then it says at the end, and you can tell people, come save clothing with me. Just like you said to them regarding the food, come save with me. So the Gemara says, we originally said that you can only bring out 3 meals, and now you're telling me 100 loaves in a basket. How could that be? Amar Ravuna says, Lo kashya, no problem. It depends. If you are bundling this up into a package, you are only allowed to bundle into the package 3 meals worth of food. But if you already have, in other words, you already have a basket full of 100 seudot, you don't have to empty out 97 of the seudot, just take whatever you have. Just take the one item.
Makes sense.
Okay, so that's one way. Rabbi Abba Bar Zavda Amar Rav. Rabbi Abba Bar Zavda said that Rav said, no, idi ve'idi, I'm sorry, I skipped. Right, so so what I just said, basically if you're gathering together you can only gather 3 meals worth, but if it's already in a basket you just take the basket. Rabbi Abba Bar Zavda said, Amar Rav, that Rav says, you know what matters? Not whether you have to, even if you have to gather this food up, it's okay to gather as much as you can fit into one basket. The only thing is, it depends where you're bringing it. If you're bringing it to the same courtyard, in other words, you're not going to be traveling very far, you're just going to bring it at one time to the closest courtyard, so then you're allowed to bring as many as you want. Right? You can pile as much as you want into this basket and bring it out. But if you're going to be bringing it into another courtyard, in other words, you're going to be carrying it far, so then you can only bring 3 seudot. You can only bring 3 meals worth of food. Ravuna, the son of Rav Yoshua, asked, we're going back to the explanation before. That what's the distinction here? The distinction is whether you're gathering this food, because whether you're gathering it into a basket, or whether you found the basket with the food already in it. So he says, what if I take my talit and I lay my talit out and I fold and I put the food into the talit? So really, in the end, I'm only going to be carrying one thing because I'm going to fold it all up into one thing, right? But on the other hand, I'm going through the process of gathering everything. So what do we compare that to? Do we compare that to the case where you have one big basket with all the items inside? Or do we compare that to a case where you have multiple baskets? Because on one hand, I have to gather all the food and put it into this talit, and I'm going to fold up the talit and I'm going to carry it. But on the other hand, in the end, all I'm carrying out is one thing. So what should we look at it as? So mida amar Rava at Rav Shizvi l'Rav Chizda v'Darashu b'Vat Shlevi Kalishu Machazik Yoter Megibel Seudot Shema Mina Kebal Hatzil Dameh V'Shapir Dameh. He says from the fact that Rava tricked Rav Shizvi, Rav Shizvi tricked Rav Chizda and told him that you can only bring a vessel that holds 3 meals worth of food. We can, since it was a trick and it wasn't true, and really you can bring a vessel as large as you want. So we learn that as long as what you carry out of the house is one basket, we don't care if it's a huge basket or it's a small basket. Because when Rav Shizvi told Rav Chizda that you could only bring a small basket, he was tricking him. Okay? So we see that as long as what you bring out of the house is one big basket, we don't care that you gathered lots of things into that one big basket. We don't care that you gathered lots of things into your one talit. You're just not allowed to bring 4 picnic baskets with you, each one with a meal. But if you have 10 meals all in one basket, even if you put them in there, that's fine. Amar le Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak le Rava. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said to Rava, what was the mistake? What was the trick that Rav Shizvi pulled on Rav Chizda? Amar le de Katani, because he said, Because we learned before that if your barrel of wine is leaking on Shabbat, so you can put a vessel under it to collect the wine, but you can't bring another vessel and hold it to get what's coming out the sides, or hold it to get what's dripping off the roof. Only one vessel can be placed there to save the liquid. But it doesn't say how large the vessel needs to be. The vessel can be as large as you want. So what do you see? As long as it's only one vessel, we're not concerned about the size of the vessel. You can bring these pressed fruits. So we learned that it says in the Mishnah that these individuals who come to help you save your food, they can come afterwards and say, pay us for what we did. Pay us. Right? They want to get their money back. So the Gemara says, what does it mean, pay us for what we did? And it sounds right now, the Gemara is assuming that they're going to return whatever they saved for you. They saved your food, they're going to return it to you, and you have to pay them now. So the Gemara says, why should they have to return it to you? Why don't they just keep it? It was hefker. It was ownerless, because you said anybody can take whatever they want because I can't save it anyway. Amar Rav Chisda said, Midat Chasidut Shadukam. We're talking about Midat Chasidut. These people were being really nice. So they said, you know what? Even though we are entitled to keep this, we're going to let you take it. But you have to pay us, because we own it now. Amar Rava says, Chasidei Agrad de Shabbat Sheklei. Are you kidding? So they're so pious, but they're demanding from the homeowner that he pay them for what they did. If they're so pious, why don't they just give it back to him? Rather, we're talking here about people who fear God. So they're not the most pious, but they're not so bad. Because the ordinary people could just keep it for themselves. They saved whatever they could save and they get to keep it. Really nice people, the Hasidim, would return it for free. They're going to come and say, listen, so what it says is that on one hand, they don't want to benefit from something that doesn't belong to them. So they want to return the food to the homeowner that they saved for him. But they don't want to work for free. This is what they said. That if they're smart enough that they know the kiyai gavna, that this way is lav zachar shabbatu. It's not a violation of making money on Shabbat, because they did the work for free. They're just coming afterwards and saying, hey, can you compensate us for our efforts that we saved your food? So they're not nice enough to do the work for free, but they're nice enough to at least return what they could have kept, because they saved it from the burning house. They could have kept it. So that's the halacha. So now we said, where can you bring it to? And the Gemara skips to a different point at the end. In the beginning of the Mishnah, when it's talking about food, it said, he tells everybody, save for yourselves whatever you can. But at the end he says, save with me whatever you can. When he's talking about the clothing, he says, save with me. So what's the difference? Amrei gabe mezonot katane lachem mishum de la kahazu ela mazon shalosh saudot aval gabe levushin katane imi mishum de kahazel lechule yomad. The reason is because when it comes to food, all he can keep on that Shabbat anyway is the 3 meals. So he says, you save for yourselves whatever you can save. 3 meals for each person. They can also save 3 meals each. But when it comes to clothing, the homeowner himself could wear all this clothing all day long on Shabbat. So really it's all for him. He says, save it with me. If he could carry more, he would. It's just that he has to wear it out. So he's limited in how much he can carry. But it's unlimited in how much he can bring, and how much he's allowed to save, and how much he's allowed to use on Shabbat. So therefore he says, save with me, because they're really helping him. Because he would be able to keep all that stuff on Shabbat. He doesn't have to let them keep it. The food, he has to let them keep it, because he's only allowed to save 3 meals worth of food from the burning house. They're allowed to save 3 meals each as well. Rabbi Meir says, even if the house is burning all day long, this guy can go in, get himself dressed in as many layers as possible, bring them out, unload them, go back in, get dressed again, and so on, to save his entire wardrobe from the house. Rabbi Yosef says, Shimona asar keleim ve'elohim. He can only wear 18 garments, and these are the 18 garments he can wear. Miktoren, a certain type of a coat or cloak of some sort. It says unkali, another type of a coat. Ufunda, a type of belt. Kalbus shel pishtan. A kalbus shel pishtan is some kind of a shirt, right? That's what it says. What is it? Or some kind of a vest or a shirt. Does it say what that is? The kalbus? No? Okay, v'haluk, and he can wear his shirt underneath. Va'apiliyot, and certain type of
robe.
It's a robe? Okay, a robe, yeah. So apiliyot, and Rashi has here apiliyon, it should be, which means, again, something that covers his entire body. Umaporet is something that covers his head. Ushne sefarkin. These are certain types of things that go on his lower leg. Ushne min alin, and 2 shoes. Ushne an pilaot, and 2 socks. Ushne pergod, and these are something apparently that hold up the that are going to hold up his the socks, right? And then he has v'chagor shebimotnav, and he has the belt around his waist, v'kova sheberosho, and the hat on his head, v'sutar shebetavaro, and the scarf around his neck. So you have all these. In other words, the point is that he has to have 18 garments. Each has a distinct function, right? This would actually be a normal outfit. So he's not doubling up. He's not wearing 3 coats and 10 socks. He's wearing just what a person would wear in a normal outfit, just a complete outfit. So everything that a person would wear at the same time, on their legs, on their feet, on their body, on their head, on their neck, all these things is what he can wear in one trip to save whatever he has in his house. Now we come to the new Mishnah. Rabbi Shimon ben Nanas Omer porsin or shel gedi. A person can spread out the skin of a goat al gabe shida teva umigdal. If a closet or a cabinet or some piece of furniture has caught on fire, because if he puts this thick skin over it, it will stop the fire from burning further. It's fire repellent. Okay, it's fire retardant. So when the fire comes, it will be repelled. It won't spread throughout the house. And you can make, let's say you say you can't put out the fire, but you can line up vessels in front of the fire that will block the fire from spreading, even if they're full of water, so that when the fire comes, they'll burst and put out the fire. That's okay, it's indirect. That's called geram kiboy, you're allowed to do that. However, Rabbi Yossi says, no, you cannot put earthenware vessels full of water that are new. Because what's going to happen if you do that? They're going to burst when the fire comes, and they're going to put out the fire. So according to Rabbi Yossi, you cannot do indirect extinguishing. According to the Chachamim, indirect extinguishing is okay. You line up the canisters of water, they blow up, they crack, the water spills out, it puts out the fire, no problem. As long as you didn't do it directly. The Gemara says, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav. Rav Yehuda says that Rav said, Talit shachaz ba'ur mitzad echad, notnin alei mayim mitzad acher. If a talit catches fire on one side, put water on the other side of it, so when the fire comes, it will go out and will not spread through the talit. V'im kavita, if that extinguishes the fire, kavita, no problem. You didn't directly pour the water on the fire, so it's no problem. Metive, there is an objection. Talit shachaz ha'ur mitzad echad poshta umitkaseba. V'im kavita kavita. It says if a talit catches fire, you can put it on and take it off. And if that causes the fire to go out, no problem, because it was indirect. Now, why you would want to do that? It could catch you on fire. It doesn't seem like a good idea. But okay, similarly, a Sefer Torah that catches fire on Shabbat, you can't put out the fire, so what do? Open it to read out of it, and maybe the bumping will cause it to go out. Vim kaba kaba. Right? If he extinguishes, he extinguishes. We turn to Kuf Chav. So the problem here is that it says that Rav Yehuda said that Rav said that if you had a talit that caught fire, you could put water on it or next to it, and the water will extinguish it before it gets to the rest of the talit, so it doesn't spread. But in this bright that says you can put it on or off, but you can't put any water there. So it says Huda Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Nanas. So that's Rabbi Shimon ben Nanas. Rabbi Yehuda is following the position of Rabbi Shimon ben Nanas in our Mishnah, who said that you can put water in front of the fire so that when the fire comes, it will automatically be extinguished. Right, indirectly. So Emar da Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Nanas mipnei shu meharech geram kiboy mi Amar. What are you talking about? Rabbi Shimon ben Nanas only talks about fire retardant materials. In other words, putting the thick skin over the cabinet so the fire doesn't spread. He doesn't say you can indirectly extinguish anything. So it says no. But Garam Kiboy Mi Amar, did he ever say that? He did. Mi de Katani Seifa, because it says at the end of the Mishnah, Rabbi Yosei Oser B'chlei Cheres Chadashim, Melei Imayim, She'enan Yicholin Lekabel Ta'or, Then Mitbakein Umechabin Atadleka, Miklal Tanaka Masharei, because from the end of the Mishnah it said that Rabbi Yosei said that you're not allowed to line up these canisters that are going to explode and put out the fire. So the implication is that the first Tana said that you could do that. You're allowed to do the indirect type of extinguishing. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Ner shal gabe tavla. What if you left your ner, you left your candle on top of a board? Mina'eret tavla, you can shake the tavla. Vino felet, and the candle falls. Vim kavata kavtan, if it goes out, it goes out. Now it could also burn down your house. Might not be a good idea, but in theory, right? And Amrei Dever Rabbi Yanai, the members of the yeshiva of Rabbi Yanai said, Lo shanu ela b'shochech, aval b'maniach, nasa basis devar asur. Obviously, this is only talking about if you forgot the candle. In other words, you put the candle down before Shabbat on a tray. You didn't mean to put it there. You needed that tray. Because if you put the candle down on purpose, then the tray would become muktzeh anyway. You're not allowed to move it anymore. So it must be that you forgot the candle there, and now you want to move it. So what do? Pick up the tray like this. The candle falls. I didn't extinguish it. Okay, it went out. That's what he says. Tana, it says in the Baraita, Ner shachorei delet potech menoel kedarko v'im kavata kavata. If you have a candle in the back of your door. So there are three interpretations. There are two basic interpretations that are brought. There are actually three, but the one is that this means that the candle is sitting behind the door. So when you open the door, the draft might extinguish it. The other one is Tosafot. Tosafot says that actually the candle's attached to the door. So when you move the door, it actually causes the candle either to flare up or to diminish in it because you move it. You know, when you move a candle, the wick moves, it shifts, and it changes the distribution of the light. So he said, Layet Allah Rav. Rav cursed this teaching. He said, I don't like that teaching. You shouldn't open the door if there's a candle there that might be extinguished or flamed up as a result. So the question is, Amar le Ravina le Ravacha b'rei the Rava. Ravina said to Ravacha, the son of Rava. Va'amre la, and some say Ravacha b'rei the Rava le Ravashi, that Ravacha b'rei the Ravashi, the Rava said to Ravashi, Mai ta'ama la'it ala Rav. Why does Rav dislike this teaching so much that you can open the door when there's a candle behind it on Shabbat? Ile ma mishum de Rav savar la Rabbi Yehuda. V'tanaka tanei la Rabbi Shimon. Is it because, remember the old machloket, the old argument between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon, that Rabbi Yehuda says, Davar she'eno mitkaven, if you do something and there's an unintended consequence, you're still responsible for it. So here, you're opening the door. Do you want to extinguish the fire? No, you just want to open the door. Yeah, so it's unintended. But according to Rabbi Yehuda,
if there was a small chance, that would have, right, there was a big chance.
Even if there's a big chance, but if it's not definite, right? Rabbi Yehuda says, still, you're not allowed to do it.
Oh, so that's what it meant.
Rabbi Shimon, if it's definite, everybody agrees you can't. If it's definitely not, obviously it's okay. If it definitely will cause the prohibited result, then it's definitely prohibited. But what if it's maybe not? So Rabbi Yehuda says we can't allow you to open the door because you're going to flare up the flame or you're going to diminish it. So even though that's not your intention, so maybe that's why, because Rav holds like Rabbi Yehuda that an unintended thing you're still responsible for it. Okay, so but that is that called the Tanei Rabbi Shimon Melat Layet. Just because he disagrees with this teaching, he's going to curse the teaching just because he disagrees with it. Amar le beha afilu Rabbi Shimon moded ha abaye v'ravad amrei tarvayu moded Rabbi Shimon b'sik Rashi v'lo yamut. The reason that he cursed the teaching was because he said it's inevitable if the candle is right behind the door that it's going to affect it. It's inevitable. You can't say, oh, I didn't intend to affect the candle. If the candle's attached to the door, then for sure. And even if the candle's right behind the door, if you open the door, the draft is going to come. How could you say that it's unintended? It's inevitable. You can't put a candle there on Shabbat. That's why he was upset about it. Amar Rav Yehuda said, that if you have a fireplace in your house and it's right in front of the door, you can open the door on Shabbat. It's no problem that the wind is going to come in and blow the fireplace. It's no problem. Layet Allah Abaye. Abaye cursed this teaching. He didn't like this one. Why? Now, what kind of wind are we talking about here? If we're talking about a very gentle wind, that doesn't make a difference. Why would we prohibit that? And if we're talking about a raging wind, it's a tornado, why would we permit that? Obviously, if you open the door and there's a hurricane going on outside, it's going to put out your fire, or it's going to stoke your fire. So, what we're talking about here is that the machloket here is, do we make a gezerah? Do we say that when there's a soft wind blowing, you shouldn't open the door and allow the soft wind to come in and blow into your house if you have a fire right there, right in front of the door? Because if you do that, you might do it even when there's a strong wind. So the rabbis were saying, Rabbi Yehuda was saying, we're not concerned. As long as the wind is gentle and it's not going to affect the fire, you can open the door. Abaye said, no, we have to be concerned that maybe you can't tell the difference between a wind that's strong, a wind that's weak, and you'll make a mistake. So therefore, Abaye did not like allowing people to open doors right in front of raging fires, because he said that if the fire is burning, it's going to be there's a chance you might open the door when the wind will come in and stoke the fire.
Is the Isur just affecting the fire in any way?
Well, yeah, because causing it to burn more is havara, and causing it to extinguish is kibbut. Right. They're both no good.
So then why would there be a difference between a small fire?
Because a small wind might not even have any effect at all. It's imperceptible.
Well, okay.
Yeah, but imperceptible. It has to be perceptible. It has to be perceptible. Otherwise, you can't move. You can't. Okay, so when you move, you just cause the fire to flare 5,000 miles away.
As opposed to visibly seeing the fire being.
It has to be perceptible. Yeah. So now we say like this. So the rabbis were the ones that said you can make a wall of vessels around the fire, and they can even be full of water, and you can hope that the fire will touch them. The vessels will open and will put out the fire, and that's okay. That's called garam kiboy, indirect. Rav Yossi says you can't do that. So now we say like this: Basically, that's the machloket then, that the rabbis say that you're allowed to do indirect extinguishing. The fire extinguished itself by popping open the earthenware jugs. I didn't do it. I just put the water there. Rabbi Yossi says no, you can't do that. But we heard the opposite, because Rabbi Yossi, that we learned in a Braita that it says you can make a mechitza, you can make a wall around the fire with empty vessels, or vessels that are hardy enough that they won't break. And what are we talking about? Metallic vessels that won't break under the pressure of the fire. Rabbi Yossi says, even vessels from the village of Sichin and vessels from the village of Hanania, they won't break either. So he was being more lenient, actually. In other words, in this Braita, everyone is agreeing you can't put vessels that are going to break full of water around a fire. And in fact, Rabbi Yossi is the lenient one. He's saying not only metal vessels are you allowed to put, but even certain earthenware vessels that are made very well from certain villages you're allowed to put. So he's being more lenient, yeah.
So everybody agrees that you're not allowed to.
That's what it sounds like.
Indirectly.
That's what it would sound like, right? Maybe you'll tell me to reverse the opinions in our Mishnah. In other words, we'll say in our Mishnah that it was really the Chachamim that said that you cannot extinguish the fire indirectly, and Rabbi Yossi was the one who said you can. But Rabbi Yossi the Braita ledivrehem ka'amar. And in this Braita, what about this Braita then? This Braita where Rabbi Yossi is saying, you can even use earthenware vessels that are very hardy. He is just saying ledivrehem. He's saying, I say you can even put vessels that will explode. But for you guys who say it has to be a vessel that won't explode, you should add to your list also earthenware vessels that are made very well. But really, he's the more lenient one. He doesn't hold by the whole thing. Can you really reverse it like that? Because in other words, the problem is that in the Braita, nobody holds that you can put vessels around that are going to explode and extinguish the fire. Right? Nobody seems to hold that. But maybe Rabbi Yossi really did hold that. He's just humoring the rabbis and saying, according to you, you should also add this. But really, I say it's all good. Okay, but if that's true, what about this? Rabbah Bar Tachlifa said in the name of Rav, Man Tanagaram Kiboy Asur, Rabbi Yossi. There's a tradition coming down that Rabbi Yossi is the one who says you cannot indirectly extinguish a fire. Rather, we cannot reverse the opinions. Rather, we must amend the Braita. The Braita in its entirety is following Rabbi Yossi. That's why the Braita in its entirety was saying that you cannot indirectly extinguish a fire.
So what about stringent?
Yeah, right. So why is that? Why then is Rabbi Yosei mentioned at the end of the Baraita? And why does it sound like he's disagreeing with the first opinion? Because we're reading it wrong. It should say this: Osin machita b'kelim rikininu b'melei she'en darkan l'shtaber ve'elohen kelim she'en darkan l'shtaber kelei matachot uklei kafar sichin uklei kafar chananya nami en darkan l'shtaber she'Rabbi Yosei omer av kelei kafar sichin uklei kafar chananya en darkan l'shtaber. Basically, the way that we read the Baraita now is that it's all representing the view of Rabbi Yosei. That it said you can make a wall around the fire of empty or full vessels as long as the full vessels, the vessels full of water, don't normally break. Correct? And it says what is defined as a vessel that won't normally break: metal vessels and vessels from Kfar Sichin and Kfar Chananya. Because Rabbi Yossi says those vessels are made as well as metal vessels. In other words, this whole Braita is following the opinion of Rabbi Yosei. But actually the Chachamim would say you can deliberately put vessels with water in them that are going to break around the fire and it's no problem. We're going to show you a contradiction between the rabbis and between different statements of Rabbi Yosei. How so? Because it says in another Baraita, let's say a person tattooed the name of Hashem on his body, or he drew the name of God on his body. He can't go to take a bath. He has the name of Hashem on his body. And he cannot anoint himself with oil because he might erase it. He can't erase the name of God. And he cannot stand in a dirty place like a bathroom because he's got God's name on his hand. What if he has to go into the mikveh? What does he do? Korech alea gemi. He puts a some kind of a reed around his arm. V'yored v'tovel, and he goes down and goes to the mikveh.
But then the tefillah is not kosher.
Oh, wait, we'll see. Rabbi Yosei omer le'olam yored v'tovel kedarko v'vad shelo yishafshef. According to Rabbi Yosei, he can go in even without covering the name of God as long as he doesn't rub on that area to erase it. So what's the problem? How does this relate? How does this issue about erasing God's name relate to what we said so far? Because it's indirect erasure, right? Because if you go into the water, then indirectly what's going to happen? The water's going to wash off some of the writing of God's name off your arm. Okay? So it's indirect. So who's the one who's more lenient in this case? Rabbi Yosei is saying, go into the water, no problem. Let it erase it, I don't care. Chachamim are saying, no, you can't do that. So that's the opposite of what they're saying in Shabbat. On Shabbat they're saying, you can do indirect extinguishing. And Rabbi Yosei is saying, no, indirect is no good. So they're reversing. So how does it work? So, that there's a difference, because when it comes to erasing God's name, the Torah says, erase the name of idolatry. Lo ta'asun ken l'Hashem Elohechem. Don't do it to Hashem's name. Right? Asiyahu da'asur gerama shareh. Doing it is prohibited, but indirect is not prohibited. But now the Gemara says that's not true. I'll say the same thing about Shabbat. Shabbat, it also says don't do work. Maybe indirect is okay then. So we're going to say, you know what the reason why indirect is a problem? The issue of indirect is a problem because if we allow you to do it indirectly, Rabbi Yosei is saying, okay, then you're going to end up extinguishing it directly. In other words, Rabbi Yosei is saying you're right. On a biblical level, indirectly, having the extinguishing, like putting these jugs that are going to break and the water is going to extinguish the fire, is okay. But the rabbis won't let you do it, because if you do that, you might end up extinguishing it directly because you get nervous. If that's true, but now the rabbis have a problem. In other words, according to Rabbi Yosei, it's no problem. Really, he holds that indirect action is no problem at all. When it comes to indirectly erasing the name of God, he doesn't care. And when it comes to Shabbat, he's concerned that you might deliberately do it. That's why he doesn't let you do it. But what about the rabbis? So wait, if over there on Shabbat they allow you, in other words, they allow your indirect extinguishing to set up this booby trap type thing that it's going to extinguish the fire. So, and they're not concerned that maybe you'll come to extinguish it directly. So why are they concerned about you going into the water of the mikveh with the name of God on your arm? They should also say that that's only indirect. It doesn't make a difference. Rather, v'tisbera, the Gemara says, wait a second. Hai gemi hechidame idem yadak kahave miyadak kahave chatzitza ila miyadak ayle b'maya. So the Gemara says, wait a second. What kind of a reed is this that you're tying? If it's tightly tied on, it's a chatzitza. How can you go to, this is what you were asking, how can you go to the mikveh, when you go to the mikveh there can't be anything blocking the water from going on you. So how can you have a band tied around your arm like that? So that's a problem. So if it's tightly tied, then it's going to block, wait, that's not yet. So if it's tightly tied, it's going to block the water. If it's loosely tied, it's not going to prevent the water from getting in. But what's going to happen then? It's going to erase the name. Mm-hmm. So what do you gain from having the reed? What do you gain then? So the Gemara says, you have an even more basic issue. What about the fact that the ink itself is an interposition? So it says balecha. We're talking about where it is liquid ink. It's liquidy. Okay, the Tanya says in the right, because we said that blood and ink and honey and milk, when they've become solid, in other words, when they've hardened on the body, then they interpose. But when they're still liquidy, they don't. So the issue is mikol makom kasher. We have a problem with the reed though, because if you tie it tightly, you're not going to the mikveh because it doesn't count. And if you tie it loosely, how is it preventing the name from getting erased? So rather than El Amar Rav Barav Shela, Rav Barav Shela said, Hainu ta'amayu de Rabbanan. This is the reasoning of the rabbis. De kasavre asur la'amod b'fnei Hashem arum. The problem is you can't be in the presence of the name of Hashem naked. That's the problem. So we're not concerned about the erasing. You're right, the indirect erasing of going into the mikveh, we don't care about that. We care about it on Shabbat, according to Rabbi Yossi, the indirect, because Rabbi Yossi is saying you might come to do it directly. And the rabbis are not concerned about that. But when it comes to erasing the name, we're not concerned about indirect. What we're concerned about is that it's inappropriate, it's disrespectful that you're going to the mikveh and you're not clothed and you don't have it covered. So you need to cover it. Miklal, the Rabbi Yossi savar mutar lamod b'fnei Hashem arum. Are you telling me that Rabbi Yossi is not bothered by that? He says you don't have to put a reed around the name of God on your arm. He doesn't care that you're not going to be clothed and you're going to be going into the mikveh like that. Demanach yadei ilave. He must say that you cover it with your hand. You cover it with your hand. So the Rabbanan Nami, demanach yadei ilave. So why can't the rabbis also say just cover it with your hand? Why do they need a reed? Sometimes you'll get distracted and you'll forget why you had your hand sitting there and you'll move it. Okay, so the Rabbi Yosei Nami zimnin de mishalei v'shakele. Same problem with Rabbi Yosei. In other words, if you're going to say that Rabbi Yosei agrees that you can't be in front of the name of God when you're unclothed, then why doesn't he require a reed too? If you require a reed, he should require it. If you don't require a reed because you can cover your arm with your hand, then the rabbi should say that too. So what's the answer? Rather, if there is a reed, then hachinami, you're right. That even Rabbi Yosei would say you need to put something over it. In other words, everyone agrees if you can cover it, cover it. But loosely, so the water still gets through. What are we talking about here? We're talking about whether the person has to search for it. Rabbanan, Savrei, the rabbis hold, Tevila bizman alav mitzvah. O me'adrinan. The rabbis say, just because you are tameh, just because you're impure, doesn't mean you have to go to the mikveh right away. As soon as possible. So if you don't have something to cover over the name of God, wait until you have something. You're not in a rush. You don't have to go right away. Tevilah bizmana lav mitzvah. It's not an emergency that you have to go immediately.
Where the name of God came on the...
I don't know. He wrote it on there. Somebody wrote it on there. No, because then it would be embedded in there. He just wrote it on there. I don't know why. Who knows? For Rabbi Yosei savar tevilah bizmana mitzvah. So Rabbi Yosei holds that no, going to the mikveh at the earliest possible opportunity is a mitzvah. So therefore, if you didn't have something to cover over the name, you should just put your hand over it and go. Because it's a mitzvah to go as soon as possible. V'hatanya, but v'savar Rabbi Yosei, tevilah bizmana mitzvah. So does Rabbi Yosei really say that going to the mikveh at the earliest possible time is a mitzvah? Ve'atanya, but we learned in a braita, hazav v'hazava hamitzora v'hamitzora at bo'el nida utmemet. A zav is a person who has a genital problem, that he has this flow from it that's not the normal flow. A zava is a woman who has an excessive flow that's not normal. Ha-mitzorah, va-mitzora'at. These are people who have this special type of leprosy. Bo'el nida is someone who has relations with a menstruant. Utmemet, or a person who became tameh from a dead body. Tevilatan bayom. When do they go to the mikveh? During the daytime. Nida v'yoledet tevilatan balayla. A nida, a woman who had her period and then waited the requisite time and went to the mikveh, she goes at night. V'yoledet, a woman who gave birth, she goes at night. Okay? Balkeri tovel veholech kol hayom. Kol hayom kulo. A balkeri is somebody who had a seminal emission. He can go anytime, day or night, the balkeri is allowed to go. Okay, Rabbi Yosef Omer, Rabbi Yosef says, Mina mincha u'lemala eno tzarich, he says that eno tzarich lidbol, that from mincha and on he doesn't have to go. Now, what is this talking about, by the way? This is talking about these people who were tameh, their day of going to the mikveh fell out on Yom Kippur. It fell out on Yom Kippur. So normally we don't take a bath on Yom Kippur of any kind. But if you hold that tevilah bizmana mitzvah, in other words, if you hold that tevilah bizmana lav mitzvahi, right, that going to the mikveh at the earliest possible time is not a mitzvah. So why would I go on Yom Kippur? I can go tomorrow. I can go after Yom Kippur. But if tevilah bizmana mitzvah, if going to the mikveh on the proper day, on the earliest possible time, is a mitzvah, so then I'm allowed to go even on Yom Kippur. Okay, so that's what they're talking about. They're saying even on Yom Kippur, when it says the zav, the zava, all these people, they can go on the day of Yom Kippur.
But doesn't that have a lota aseh, which would overrule a mitzvah aseh?
It's a
lota aseh of
no, because washing on Yom Kippur is only when it's for pleasure.
So
it's only a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah. So you're allowed to. The Kohen Gadol does 1,000,000 tevilot. He does 5 tevilot on Yom Kippur. So he's allowed to. The Kohen Gadol read the Avodah. Ve'yarad ve'taval ve'ala No, we don't do it nowadays. But the Kohen Gadol, it says many times ve'yarad ve'taval ve'ala ve'nistapag. Right? Yeah, Avodah he did. Many times. So for real tahora, you'd be allowed to go. So what is that? So if the nida has her night of mikveh on Yom Kippur, she would go. According to Tevilah Bizmana Mitzvah, in those days. Not anymore. So, because now we don't, because that was in the laws of Tumah v'Tahora when purity and impurity was enforced. We don't have that. We only have for marital going to the mikveh. So that, obviously in Yom Kippur it doesn't apply anyway. So So all these people would go on the day of Yom Kippur. Rabbi Yosef Omer, that if he prayed mincha already, and Tosafot says this means he prayed ne'ilah as well. Okay, then Rashi says that he didn't pray ne'ilah yet, but that he holds that praying ne'ilah at night is okay. Tosafot says that no, it means that he already prayed ne'ilah as well. Either way, the point is when he's done with all of his tefillot for the day, the Balkeri, why does he go to the mikveh? So we can say, remember, because we learned in Masekhet Berachot that somebody who has a seminal emission cannot say Hashem's name, cannot pray, cannot learn Torah. So we don't practice that anymore today. That's a custom that they instituted in the times of Ezra that fell out of practice. But in those days, they still followed it. So if the person wanted to be able to pray Mincha on Yom Kippur and he had a seminal emission, he wouldn't be able to. So he would be able to go to the mikveh. But if he already prayed for that day, what need does he have to go to the mikveh that day? None. No need. So according to Rabbi Yosef then, there's no inherent mitzvah to go to the mikveh at the earliest possible time. Because we tell the guy, if you don't need to go today because you don't need to say any more prayers today, wait till tomorrow. What do you mean wait till tomorrow? Isn't it a mitzvah to go the earliest possible time? So, no, Rabbi Yosef is saying it isn't, right? So we were trying to explain that Rabbi Yosef says that you must go at the earliest possible time. And that's why he says if you don't have a reed or something to wrap around your arm when you go to the mikveh, if your arm has Hashem's name on it, then wait. Don't wait, just go right away. And the Chachamim said wait because it's not important to go right away, it's more important to have it covered. But here you see that Rabbi Yosef is saying there is no immediate mitzvah that you have to go. So how can we say that he said that? How can we use How can we assume that he says there's an immediate mitzvah to go? So the Gemara answers that Hahi Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehudahi Damar Dayat Tevila B'Acharona. That this is not our Rabbi Yosef. There were two Rabbi Yosefs. There was Rabbi Yosef and there was Rabbi Yosef Bar Yehuda. Okay? So this is Rabbi Yosef Bar Rabbi Yehuda who says that it's enough. Literally what that means is Dayat Tevila B'Acharona. It's enough for her the last immersion. So what this is talking about is a complex case of a yoledet, a woman who gives birth, doesn't know whether she gave birth to a boy or a girl or exactly what the timeline was when she gave birth. Okay? Now, we know that there are differences in the purity and impurity laws of whether you give birth to a boy or a girl. And we also know that there's a difference in terms of when the woman is supposed to go to the mikveh, and also when the woman is supposed to bring her korban at the end of being a yoledet and everything. So there's a whole complicated situation. And in Masekhet Nida, it says that in a certain very complex case of safek, the woman has to go to the mikveh 35 times. Why does she have to go 35 times? To exhaust every possibility of when the actual time might be. But Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda says, why do that? Just wait until the latest possible time that makes sense, and then go. In other words, it could be that the earliest time was after 7 days. It could be the earliest time was after 8 days. It could be the earliest time was after 9 days. So just go for the latest time. Right. So the first Tana says in Masechet Nida, cover every possibility. You end up with 35 times.
That's obviously because he goes by.
Right.
You have to go the earliest time.
Right, because you have to go at the right time, the right time. Right. So then there are many possibilities. But Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda says, I don't care about right time. I just care that it's a valid tevilah. So just wait until you know that she's definitely in the clear. Why would she go every possible time? So if you hold that going to the mikveh at the absolute earliest possible time is necessary, so then she's going to have to go every time that might be the earliest possible time. So there are 35 different possibilities. But if you don't say that it has to be immediately at the earliest possible time, but you say that it just has to be when we know it's kasher, so wait until all the possibilities are passed. Let's say wait till the end, and when you know that this is definitely the end, that she's waited long enough to go to the mikveh, go that time, and it's definitely good. So Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda is the one represented in this Mishnah here about Yom Kippur. But our Rabbi Yosef actually holds that Tevilah Bizmana mitzvah. Therefore, he says if you don't have a reed available to cover over the name of God, you go anyway. And the Chachamim say that no, better to wait till you can cover the name of God before you go to the mikveh. So this is a machloket that between and going back to our Mishnah then originally. So in the end we say that both Rabbi Yosef and the Chachamim agree that indirect extinguishing is only rabbinically prohibited. But Rabbi Yosef said we have to make a gezerah. We have to be concerned that if you indirectly extinguish the fire, you might come to directly extinguish it, and the rabbis are not concerned. And in the case of Hashem's name written on the body, the reconciliation between them is it has nothing at all to do with indirect causality. That neither of them cares if the water washes away the name of God because it's indirect. What they care about is being unclothed in the presence of the name of God. And there we have a question: is it more important to go to the mikveh at the right time? Or is it more important to make sure that you cover that spot when you go to the mikveh? And that's the machloka between Rabbi Yosef and the rabbis in that case.